Today, we're taking a break from our normal format to just kind of have a conversation about some of the weird stuff that we found online in terms of video games through our research for the podcast. So, we're going to be talking about weird video games. Stick around and join us for our odd trip around Memory Card Lane. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope these words find you well. Hello and welcome to the 133rd, had to think about that for a second, episode of our video game history podcast, A Trip Down Memory Card Lane. Each week, we'll tell you a story about one topic relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game, a console, a person, so on and so forth. While doing so, we hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world and its legacy. Today, it's not so much one coherent story, it's a whole bunch of little stories. So if you're here to get some life-changing story about your favorite video game, it's gonna not be that. Today we're gonna take a look at some weird video games, like the weirdest of the weird that I could find. And so we're going to have a little bit of fun with it today. Won't be your typical history lesson. I'm David Casson, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, who is the weirdest guy I know. He's my brother, Rob Casson. Rob, why can't you just be like everyone else?
Where is the fun in that, Dave?
That's a good point.
Can't be like another cog in the machine, man. You gotta be free.
Yeah, you do have to be free. What are you playing?
Well, Dave, this week has seen some Rocket League, some RuneScape, some Raft, a little bit of Factorio, some Oxygen not included. And I believe that's it. Yeah. How about you?
Uh I played through Resident Evil Biohazard.
Ooh, that's right. And
I think I played Factorio and Rocket League, and I played a little bit of Ark. I tried it for like 30 minutes. I tried it for like 30 minutes. That's what I'll say about that. Um,
I already know how you feel, especially if you went on one of the official servers, because, oh my god.
that's about it, I think, other than our idle game.
The idle game indeed.
The idle game, indeed. Yeah, today's going to be a little bit different. We decided to take time off from the pressure of researching and having to put together, a history lesson. There's a lot of work that goes into that this week. So today is kind of all fluff, no filler, I guess is a good way to put it. That doesn't make it any less interesting. But today we're going to be talking about weird video games. And Rob, you inspired this episode.
Yes, I sure did, Dave.
I don't remember what we were talking about, but you brought up one specific game that made me cock my head sideways and go, "What the fuck?" And I put it down on the schedule, and yeah, let's talk about Mister Mosquito.
Righto, Dave. So this one was first released to the United States on March 13th, 2002.
You've played it?
Oh, absolutely. I played the shit out of this. This is one of those games when I was in going to the video store, which was a place you went to rent games back in the days for those that don't know that. Though I'm sure that there's no one listening who doesn't know that. But I went to the old family video and rented this many, many times. It was a really fun game for me. I don't know. It was just this weird thing. I thought it was a fun challenge. I don't think that I ever managed to beat it. I played a lot of time in it though, and I feel like I always died around the same areas. But
So
the
what's the
premise
premise? What's the premise?
the premise of this one is that you play as a mosquito named Mister Mosquito.
Oh, well, that color me surprised.
I know. And you're taking up residence in the Yamada household. And it's the summertime, and you know what that means for mosquitoes?
They bite the hell out of people.
It sure does, Dave, because you gotta survive the winter ahead. So feed now, because in winter, you ain't gonna have as much blood. People are gonna be bundled up.
So you're telling me there's an entire video game based on being a mosquito and sucking blood out of people?
Absolutely, Dave.
Is that is
That's
that is that it? Like you just fly around their house and suck them?
well, I don't know if we want to phrase it like that, but each level is kind of like a puzzle where you have to figure out how to get them to expose the ideal spot without being noticed.
Uh, so like a stealth game?
In a sense, yeah, absolutely. But it's not one where if you get seen, you automatically die. If you do get noticed, the game enters a battle mode, and you get to hit a number of pressure points on the person in order to get them to calm down.
All right, I pulled up a walkthrough for this because I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't believe you. Um, each level, God, these are words I never thought I'd ever have to refer to in a video game. Each level has it literally level. I can't even get this out. The guide lists a suck spot and a suck strategy for every level. What is
Yes,
this?
sir.
Oh my gosh. So I okay, so here we go. Level 1, you're in the
The daughter.
room, the daughter. The
Yep.
suck spot is her inner thigh, and it says that the suck strategy is to turn on her radio or turn off her lights. She's initially laying in bed in one position, and when she gets up to deal with either one, she lays back down in a way that exposes her thigh. So that's the game, huh?
Yep. I remember one room, you're in the living room, and there's a damn air conditioner that always caused problems. I can't remember if that was the trick to get them to get up or not. There was, of course, you had to have, it was, I think, I forget the rating of this one, but there, of course, had to be the lady in the bathtub one, too. Can't
Oh,
forget that one. That's probably why I rented it so much when I was younger. Let's be honest here.
oh, jeez, Louise.
But it was just this weird, quirky game. I enjoyed the hell of it. I don't know what it was. I just got a kick out of it. Kick out of flying around as a mosquito and sucking the blood out of people. Maybe it was just the chance to finally see what it's like to be one of those little fuckers and stick it to the man. Because god damn it, do those little shits love to bite me.
I mean, there's 12 different levels here: storeroom, kitchen, living room, this guy, that person. You get tanks, and you have to suck more blood subsequently in levels. You know what? Nothing ceases to amaze me. They made an entire video game about being a mosquito, so go them.
Absolutely, and a great game it was.
So I'll tell you, when you told me about this, and I was like, oh, I tend to pay attention to things you mentioned, and I was like, oh, okay, well, let's look at making that to an episode. I mean, that's all there really is about the game. So I got me thinking, what other weird games are out there? Because I remember that we've talked about a few briefly in other episodes, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna bring those up later. So, for instance, we talked about this game, the next one, when we did our episode on the Nintendo 64 DD. That was that disk drive peripheral they made for the Nintendo 64. And one of the games, actually, this game never came out for the 64 DD. It was actually canceled, but originally was going to be developed for the 64, and then they brought it over to the Dreamcast. And this game actually started out as a joke that was inspired by a coworker's project, the developer's coworker, and his coworker was developing a tropical fish simulator. And what that inspired him to make for the Dreamcast was a game called Seaman. And Seaman is basically a fish with a human face. And it's a virtual pet video game, like a I don't know. Does your generation know what Tamagotchi is?
I mean, yeah, I would say yes. I actually had several of them growing up, and actually still know someone who uses them now.
What are the virtual pets of your generation? What's
I
the
mean,
equivalent?
Tamagotchi was one of them, but I guess also you could say like Neopets
Oh yeah,
in a sense. That was
Neopets.
more web based. I mean, kind of, but I feel that would be a good comparison to it.
So this game basically you use the Dreamcast controller and a microphone that came with it to give voice commands to your Seaman and keep it company. And essentially you start out with a Seaman egg and you just raise it from an egg to different stages. I mean, it's got, it's like a tadpole at one point and you just work your way to where it's an actual fish. Um, and it was kind of unique. One of the things about the 64DD that we talked about in that episode was that they put a real time clock into the DD. That was one of the first systems to ever have that. So this game plays in real time because that was kind of the thing everyone was doing back then, which means that you have to check in with your virtual pet, your Seaman. I want to say Seaman every time. Good lord. You have to check in with your Seaman daily.
So this game is quite literally taking daily care of
of
your
a
pet Seaman.
Yes,
So
which
it
is
is the video game equivalent of having a child because you kept your pet semen.
yes, and a seaman is a fish with a human head on it.
Yep, it is perfect analogy here.
Yep, the seaman talks back to you. It has an
Makes
attitude.
sense. Yep.
The game has a narrator actually that helps you along. In the United States, this game was actually narrated by Leonard Nimoy. Um, so it
I guess
wasn't
with a
like
certain type of schizophrenia, that would be the case as well.
yeah, so they started this on the 64DD and it got canceled there with, well, the 64DD, let's be honest, it wasn't around very long. And then it got brought over to Dreamcast and released in Japan in July of 99. Got brought over to the PlayStation 2 in November 2001. They had actually planned on a PC version. That PC version was going to interact with various like your computer programs. Do you remember when that was a thing? When they had like virtual assistants in your like taskbar that
Yeah,
would
you
like
had that little paper clip, or there was the gorilla who would sing "Bicycle Built for Two."
Yeah, I
The
forgot
little,
about the
I
gorilla.
think the caterpillar too. Yeah, no, I remember all of those.
I think I was at the age when those were a thing that it was scantily clad women.
I am not shocked.
That game actually got a sequel. In 2007, there was a Japanese only sequel called Seaman 2. And this in the sequel though, you're more of a god. Like they took a step back. You can control the environment on top of interacting with the character. You oversee a little small island, and this one has you're not overseeing like a fish. You're overseeing the Peking man, which is like the early human, like before Neolithic man or whatever it is. I just butchered every which way what it is, but early human, you know.
See, at first I thought that would be more like being a grandparent because you can, affect everything from outside without it being directly affecting. But I don't know if that's a great correlation. The first game, though, definitely a game about being a parent.
It was weird. I remember it. It was weird, and of course, I wanted to play every weird thing, but I never owned a. Uh, I didn't own a Dreamcast back then. Can't say I've never owned a Dreamcast. I've owned a Dreamcast in my life, but I did not own one back then, and I never had Seaman for my Dreamcast when I owned one. So,
Just
but
for everything else in your young life.
yeah. Speaking of that, this actually inspired an Xbox game I had never heard of before going down this rabbit hole. And that Xbox game, Japanese game only, released in April 2003 for the Xbox, was called Nude, N period U period D period E, or Natural Ultimate Digital Experiment. And
Nice.
in Nude, you're a tester for a new product, which in this game is a female humanoid called PASS, or Personal Assist Secretary System. It's a female robot and a humanoid. And in the beginning, robot can't do too much. You have to actually teach it. So you use the communicator headset on the original Xbox to teach the robot language, and through that, you would teach it how to complete tasks and be a more useful robot. So, nude. As if that doesn't have the connotation, you know.
I don't understand what you mean, Dave. What connotation is that?
I don't know. No, I guess. Well, I mean, the humanoid wasn't nude. In case you were wondering, it definitely was wearing clothes.
Well, that's just misleading.
But I'll tell you this: once you start down the weird video game rabbit hole, like it doesn't get much better. And I mean, there have been weird video games since even earlier than any of this. I found a game from August of '95 by a company called Sensible Software. It was made for the Amiga, and it's called Sensible Train Spotting.
Sounds fun.
It's advertised as the world's first ever computerized train spotting simulator.
I
Yeah,
didn't know that was a thing.
well, I didn't either. So, in case you're curious what that entails, you're at a train station. You have a checklist of train ID numbers on the bottom of your screen, and as trains go by, if it matches your list, you mark it off. That's it.
Um, is that like training people for a job?
Uh, you have to match so many trains in so little time. Um, so there's that. And yeah, funny enough, the only little bit on Wikipedia about this game was the game was actually embroiled in a bit of controversy. Eight
What?
years later,
How?
I know, right? 8 years later, in 2003, another company released a game called Train Tracking, which was nearly identical. They claimed that they had the world's first train tracking simulator. So one of the employees of Sensible Software took offense to this statement, bought train tracking, and made it freely downloadable on their website.
Oh, damn. Wow.
Basically, and the point was he was like daring them to like claim copyright infringement or something like that, you know? Because then they would have to bring up that it was derivative from their game, from Sensible Train Spotting.
That's genius.
I know. I It doesn't get any better from there. I There's a 2001 arcade cabinet called Boonga Boonga, which basically translates to Spankum.
Oh,
It
fun.
is the first arcade cabinet to simulate Concho, which is a Japanese prank in which the victim is poked with two fingers in the anus while distracted.
Um,
So basically, you put your hands together like a gun. You know, like both your hands together, like you're aiming a gun. You know, your fingers are the barrel and your thumb is the,
yeah,
and then you poke someone
there.
in the butt.
That's actually the Thousand Years of Death. Naruto reference.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
so the object of this game is to score points by spanking or performing concho. Basically, the arcade cabinet is a like plastic butt that's sticking out of the cabinet. There's a plastic finger attached to the machine for players to simulate the finger poking. It has 8 characters you can punish. You can punish an ex girlfriend, an ex boyfriend, a gangster, a mother in law, a gold digger, a prostitute, a child molester, or a con artist. And on the screen, your chosen character appears, and you get to watch their agony on the screen when you're doing this stuff. Um, I guess the game dispenses cards that rate players for their sexual behavior, and players who perform exceptionally well on the machine, they get a small plastic trophy in the shape of a pile of poop.
What the hell is this?
Ah, boonga boonga. Boonga. I think it's Boonga. I think I'm putting the emphasis wrong. Now, if this sounds interesting to you and you want to play it, I don't know what to tell you. There was an initial order for 200 of these cabinets, but in the end, only 5 of them were ever distributed throughout the world, which is all in Japan. So
Something else.
I, I don't, I, I don't know. I, I, I mean, it's a pretty funny looking arcade cabinet. It literally is butt cheeks sticking out of the arcade cabinet and a plastic finger. It's very unique.
Yeah, looking at it, it is definitely quite unique.
So,
Nothing like anything I've seen before.
hey, did you ever hear of a game called Muscle March?
No, that one doesn't sound familiar.
So this one, like I said, once you start going down this rabbit hole, it never really stops. The premise behind Muscle March, which came out in May of 2009 for the Wii, was that you could control one of several different bodybuilders who are trying to catch a thief that has stolen your friend's tub of protein powder.
Nice.
And basically it's like a rail shooter where you're like following everything on a path, but at certain times you go crashing through a wall and you have to match the pose of the hole in the wall, kind of like literally the game show Hole in the Wall with the Wii controllers. And so you match the pose and you flex in that pose to continue going in the level to catch up to the person.
Wow.
It was originally
That's
supposed I know. It was originally an arcade game and then they turned it into a Wii game. It's weird. I'd say it's weird, but realistically, Japan kind of has a history of muscle bound games. Um, have you ever heard of the Choaniki series?
not until you sent me a video of it.
And what did you think?
I'm very confused why there is a Viking in a Speedo who can shoot lasers from his head as he flies through a town. That's about what I gathered. That game was just I couldn't keep up with it. It was so freaking weird.
It's among the weirdest games out there. Now I've seen Choaniki for a while. It's it might be on Nikai, but in any case, it's a weird game. Originally came out for the Super CD-ROM, which was called the TurboGrafx 16 here in the United States, about 92. It's a side-scrolling shooter, but let me start with the plot. This is right from their wiki. The game's plot involves the heroes moving through various locations, space, urban environments, elaborate ruins, and fighting alien invaders while doing it. Bo Emperor Bill, Bote Biru, a pun on Boda Build, a shortened form of bodybuild in Japan. Bo Emperor Bill, the man who achieved 10 consecutive victories in the Great Galaxy Bodybuilding Contest, faces an ever decreasing supply of protein. So he unilaterally invades neighboring star systems to establish protein factories to replenish his supply. Feeling threatened, the Heaven Realm sends Ideten and Benten to vanquish Bo Emperor Bill. Thus, the sweaty hot battle between the Muscle Brothers and Builder's army begins.
Wow. That is quite the synopsis.
This game is best known, according to its encyclopedia entry, for its homoerotic overtones, wacky humor, and vivid surreal imagery.
Sounds about right with that.
Yeah, I
That's
know. It's a bunch of muscle. It's a bunch of muscly men. I know one of the scenes I remember is let's so side scrolling shooter, right? Typically you have ships coming at you, but in this one literally looks like someone took Photoshop and just made a game with shit they photoshopped. So like you said it was what, a Viking that was shooting this stuff?
yep.
I remember a picture of a guy in a black speedo on his hands and knees in front of you shooting fireballs out of his mouth.
Oh,
That's what I
I don't
remember.
remember that.
I think the last boss is a gigantic muscle man, and you work towards parts of his body. Like, I'm pretty sure you have to just fire at his abs forever to kill him. It's so flipping bizarre. Um,
Yeah, I'll say.
it's so
E-
flipping bizarre.
Even just from what I watched, it was so freaking bizarre. I just didn't have words for that game. I gave it as much of a shot as I could, and then I had to back off because it was just like, what in the hell?
Do you remember any other weird games? Like off the top of your head, is there any other weird video game that you're like, eh?
Well, there is one that I know we have on here. There's one that I played in college with my roommates. It was for PlayStation 4, I believe it was, that
Okay.
we played it on. And that was I Am Bread.
I've played I Am Bread. I Am Bread is a weird game. It, the uh, the premise is the title is true,
Oh,
right?
it's a very descriptive name for what it is. I mean, you are a piece of bread, and your whole goal is to get to the plate you want to be eaten, or the toaster. You want
The
to get to the
toaster.
toaster.
Yeah, the
That's right.
point
Get the
is you
toaster.
start somewhere in a level in a room and you have to get to the toaster. And the way you do that is every button on your controller like flips up a different piece of you. So like bottom left would be a button, top left bottom left would be a button, top left would be a button, and so on and so forth. I have my memories right, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep. It's your
And
four
then
corners, and that's how you
the
control it.
four corners, and then you have to get across the room without touching the floor, because the more you touch the floor or other things, the less edible you got. And you had to get to the toaster while maintaining as much edibility as possible, right?
Yep, that's exactly it.
Which is not the worst game, but just a really bizarre concept for a game. It reminds me of two. I don't know if it was the same guy, but there's a game that's very similar called Cat Lateral Damage, which is just like it's a first person view of a cat, and your whole point is to knock things off and damage things.
So cat things
Yeah, cat things.
seems fitting.
Now, on that topic about that same period, what I put a lot of hours into.
What's that?
Do you remember Katamari Damacy?
That does not sound what familiar to me whatsoever.
Oh my god! So Katamari Damacy is the best way to describe it is you're the prince of the king of the cosmos, and the king wants you to grow or create planets or do something to get you. Point of the game is you start out with a ball and you have to roll things into like this ball. You as you roll over them, you collect them, and the whole point is to roll the biggest ball that you can. So you maybe start out really tiny and you're rolling like, ants into a ball or like crumbs into a ball. But you put enough of those together, and then your ball can get blades of grass. You put up enough of those together, and you can start getting like dominoes. You put enough of those together, and then you can get the animals, and you keep going until you're like rolling up skyscrapers, for instance, houses, gardens, towns, stuff like that. Um, but good lord, that game is so cool because like there's something about going from thumbtacks to mountains. The whole point is to grow a ball large enough to become a star, like its own planet. And you have to start out really tiny and work your way up there level by level by level. Oh, here. Story. The game's plot concerns a prince on a mission to rebuild the stars, constellations, and moon, which were inadvertently destroyed by his father, the king of all cosmos. So there you go. What I remember most about Katamari is it has really cool music and it's really quirky and it sounds really dumb, but it's actually a really interesting. It's a really interesting game. They've made a couple of them too, haven't they?
I have no idea.
I think they've made. I think they've made a couple of them. You've really never heard of Katamari before?
Nope.
I feel like that's the kind of game that everyone's. I don't know. It's always been on my radar. Always, always, always been on my radar.
Can't say that I've ever heard of it, Dave. It's a new one to me.
What about that bird love story game? Do you remember that one?
Bird love story.
Yeah, Hatoful Boyfriend or something like that. The one with all the pigeons in it.
Nope, that one don't ring no bells either.
So that's like I haven't played it, but basically it's like a visual novel that I mean you know what a visual novel is, but it's set in Earth populated by birds, and in the game you're the only human attending the bird school, like an elite school for birds, and you work at finding love among all the birds of the game.
Okay.
So it's basically it's like a dating simulator. You know, for a while now they made all those stupid dating simulators, the visual novels that were dating simulators, you know.
Yeah.
But this one features birds,
Hmm.
pigeons, and other stuff. The game story primarily takes place at the St. Pigeonations Institute, a bird-only high school located in the fictional Japanese town of Little Dove, Ho Chi Minh City. Long after open warfare between humans and birds has ended. Society has adjusted to the avian conquest, though with minor bird related cultural changes. For example, while some holidays such as Christmas and Tanabata are celebrated much as they are in the present day, a major event in the game is Legumentine's Day, amalgamation of the traditions of Valentine's Day and Setsubun. In a more grim case, the terms War Dove and War Hawk have been repurposed as labels for two opposing political factions divided over the ongoing mutual hostility between birds and the human minority. The altruistic Dove Party, who advocate for cooperation and peace between the two groups, and the militant Hawk Party, whose goal is to exterminate humanity altogether.
That's yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't even know how I feel about that.
Beyond me, Dave. That one is something else.
Do you remember Papers, Please?
No.
Papers, Please was really interesting. You're basically an immigration agent at a fictional border crossing, and people hand you their ID, and you have to determine whether or not it's a legitimate ID and let them through, or if it's a fake and they're like a spy for the other agent. And so the whole game, it's like a puzzle game where you're just like looking at all these passports, determining if they're real or not. And it sounds stupid, but it's actually kind of interesting because it kind of have a little bit of a story to it, and there's all these interesting. I mean, it's stupid ways that they're fake or real, like a typo or something like that, you know. So you have to be real attentive to details, and like it goes by days, and they're like, "Hey, we want you to, you know, make these many people cross the border of the state to meet your objectives or stuff like that," or I don't know. You've never heard of Papers, Please?
Never.
Man, I feel like I'm the only one who gets down the rabbit hole. What about Goat Simulator? Did you ever play Goat Simulator at
Yeah.
least?
Yeah, I played Goat Simulator for all of like 5 minutes because I just got a jetpacked like a rocket pack maybe goat and it screamed at things and I kept crashing and I don't know, I just it was really freaking weird. I, it's one of those ones you don't know if you haven't played it, but it was really fucking weird.
So I looked this one up in anticipation for this conversation today, and in development, this game was described by its lead developer as an old school skating game, except instead of being a skater, you're a goat, and instead of doing tricks, you wreck stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty good way of explaining that game.
The idea followed after originally pitching the game as a variation of QWOP. Did you play that one when it was
Nope.
popular? The one where you had like each QWO and P was a different limb, and you had to like maneuver yourself with those limbs.
Oh, I didn't know that's what that was called, but yeah, I do recall that
What do you
actually.
call it? Kuwop? Quap? Quap? I don't know.
I'd assume co-op, but I don't know by
So
that.
it was originally supposed to be a game where the player would control the individual limbs of the goat separately with the keyboard keys, but this concept was rejected in favor of the more Tony Hawk's Pro Skater type of gameplay for the final game. Um, they focused on goats, after jokingly trying to convince his coworker that goats could achieve viral attention on the internet in much the same way that cats do. Yeah. So basically, for those of you who don't know, Goat Simulator is I don't even know how to put it. You're in an open world. You're a goat. You can jump, run, bash things. You can also lick objects. Licking them attaches the object to your tongue, and you can drag it and go around. You can also just turn on a ragdoll mode where the game's physics takes over. And yeah, so you can jump off trampolines and launch the goat through the air. You can do tricks to earn points. And there's not much to the game, but there also is a lot to the game. I don't know. I played it for a few hours. It's fun for a gimmick. Do you know they made a sequel though?
I did not know that.
Yeah, so there's a sequel. It's called Goat Simulator 3. If you're wondering where 2 is, it doesn't exist. That's the joke. And Goat Simulator 3 adds 4-player co-op.
Oh, okay.
And it's
I guess
like
there's some way to make that game more interesting.
8 to 10 times bigger of an open world according to the advertisement.
Wow.
Yeah, man, I don't know. There's just so many freaking weird stuff out there. There's so many weird stuff out there. I do have one more for you though. I do. I won't beat a dead. I won't beat a dead horse on weird games. But I have one more for you.
Let's hear it, Dave.
Have you ever heard of the game or an anime called Punchline?
Nope. Doesn't ring a bell.
So the game is a visual novel adventure video game. It there's an anime television series of the same name. And basically you take you're a ghost and you were rejected out of your body and you have to get back into your body. You basically haunt a house. You solve puzzles while exploring your housemates' rooms. So you basically earn points by setting up pranks that will get you points. Like you can knock something off a shelf to scare them and stuff like that. And while this sounds like a very basic game, there's a catch. And this catch is so bizarre. And just put it out there. I did watch the first episode of this. So the ghost, Yuta, gets super excited if he sees exposed panties.
Oh, nose starts bleeding?
His nose starts bleeding, yes.
Shocking.
And if he gets too excited, the power in his body summons a meteorite that wipes out the Earth.
Um. Okay.
So his excitement, and that's the joke of it, that, obviously the nose bleeding is a common trope, right?
Oh, absolutely. Very common.
So this trope is that if he gets too excited, it brings on the apocalypse.
Neat. I love it.
And the thing of it is like, there are tricks you can do that expose panties, but they give the most rewards. So it's like a high risk, high reward game. Um, it's so weird. Like it has other characters like Orange Squeeze and like superhero characters, and I don't even know. I don't even know, man. I don't even know.
I don't know, Dave.
I mean, but you gotta know. You
But I
you,
don't.
you gotta know.
But I just don't, so I can't.
You could.
I mean, potentially, yeah, but it's a very unlikely possibility.
Yeah, I know. I totally know. Um, I found a game for you while doing this though.
What'd you find for me, Dave?
It's called Toilet Kids.
Oh, tell me about Toilet Kids.
So it's an old PC Engine game, which again, TurboGrafx 16, and it starts out with you being flushed down a toilet. It's a toilet humor filled game that starts out with like you get flushed down a toilet, and then you start flying around on like this duck shaped toilet, shooting poop at poop related objects.
Nice.
You have to fight off attacks of monkeys, spiders, flies, and other animals that are flinging turds at you.
Yeah, yep, that sounds like my kind of game.
Doesn't it?
That's
It's
just incredible.
it's so weird. It is absolutely weird. Um, but yeah, that's weird video games. I mean, I'm sure there's other ones out there. I mean, I've thought about weird video games that I want to do episodes on, like Catherine, for instance. We've talked about Sneak King before. The I mean, that's got to be weird. A video game with the Burger King, um, with the Burger King character. You know,
I mean, it's weird, but it was for good reason. It was an advert.
it was an advert for sure. 100% an advert. So I'm looking up weird video game lists, and Typing of the Dead's on there. We've talked about Typing of the Dead before.
Of course it is. I'm not
Yeah.
surprised. And I actually, that being said, David Lynch teaches typing.
Oh, there you go. David Lynch is typing. Absolutely, David Lynch is typing. That
Yeah, that was
was
a very freaking weird game, undeniably.
that is fantastic. Um, yeah, that's all these weird video games. I feel like that one I played recently should be on the list. What was that? The one I thought was really gross. That was like, what the heck? Scourge? Was it Scourge?
I honestly don't know what you're referring to at the moment, so I couldn't tell you.
Um, yeah, that's it. Granny Simulator. I'm looking up random crap on Steam. Granny Simulator. Watching Grass Grow in VR. Shower with Your Dad Simulator 2015. There you go.
That's a hard pass on that game.
In all of them, the goal is to shower with the appropriate dad. There are 3 dad and son pairings that are possible.
What in the fuck?
People make some weird shit, man. Oh
Yeah,
my
ain't
god.
no denying that.
Aviary Attorney. Bird Law. They turned Bird Law into a game.
Wow. I mean that's not so surprising. They made a whole show about a Harvey Birdman law
The action
person.
happens in 1848 in Paris, a city close to revolution. Your character is Monsieur J.J. Falcon, a bird of prey. In this game, you are a bird that does not really have lawyering experience, but ends up collecting evidence, interviewing witnesses, and representing clients in front of a judge.
Okay, that's something. Not quite sure what, but that is definitely something.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we could be here all day looking at this stuff.
Oh, there is no doubt. There is never going to be an end to the number of weird games, but we showcased a few, and just be kind of interesting to hear what other people have to say and what other weird games they've had to play, because I'm sure that there are many, 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 many weird games that we missed. And I believe that there's actually a way for people to tell us all about those weird game experiences they've had. Wouldn't you say, Dave?
There is
Well, why don't you tell them about it?
a place for them to tell us about those weird experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys can go on our website at www.memorycardlane.com. There is a link on our website to tell us your story, where you can email us or message us through the board. There's also a link to our Discord if you want to join our Discord. But the point is that any of those 3 ways you can come and you can tell us about your experiences with weird video games. Maybe like me, you're a Katamari Damacy fan and you like rolling balls of stuff around. Rob, you got to listen to the music, at least for Katamari Damacy. It's really quirky and fun. Um, I would suggest that. Or maybe you want to play Punchline and look at sneaky panty shots, but with big risk. I don't know. Whatever you want to do, we want to hear about it. So check out our website, www.memorycarlane.com. Also, on our website, you can find our show notes where I'll have some of the notes for this. You can find a list of past episodes. So, for instance, C-Man we kind of talked about in our 64DD episode. If you'd like to go back and check that out, feel free to check out that episode on our website. And there's a calendar that posts our upcoming websites. So, if you'd like to join us for one of our normal episodes, next week is going to be it's going to be a great one, to be honest with you. Feel free to check out all of our websites where you can interact with us too. So, for instance, if you hit up our next episode and you look at the game and you're like, man, I love that game. Let me tell these guys what I think about it. There is a chance that we will take that and we will read it because we want to hear from you guys and not just listen to. Actually, I don't mind listening to myself talk, as you all know. So.
Yeah, no, you do not, Dave.
Anyways, check out our website, www.memorycarlane.com. Last thing is you can find links to our social media. I can be found on various platforms as David is Wrong and Rob. Where can people find you?
Well, Dave, I am actually doing a rebranding of my Twitch and social media, so we are going to hold off for this week, and I will hopefully be ready next week to unveil the new name and the new identity.
Okay, this is the first time hearing of it, so I am also going to be eagerly waiting. Eagerly waiting. So I guess it'll be a surprise for me next week too.
Indeed, it will, Dave. A man of mystery, you may say. I
A
am.
man of mystery. Well, Rob, this is usually the point in each episode where we go back and we talk about what we learned because on a normal episode, we like to teach people and learn new things. Did you learn anything today?
I learned that there is a vast multitude to the number of weird games that I never would have imagined previously in my life, although it doesn't come as quite a shock, being that there's no limit to the creativity of people and the imaginative aspects of their creation. Um, I don't know any other way to word it. Um, People will never cease to amaze me, and these games that we talked about are a perfect example of not being able to seize amazing. So yeah, that's it from me.
That's true. I learned that there's no end to how weird people can be. Every time I thought I found the end of the weird game Rainbow, another weird game, and now I have a anime to watch. I'm just kidding. I'm never going to watch that ever again. Ugh. Oh my god. I I um I sometimes worry that the research I do for stuff like this, like let's be honest, I researched a game where the whole draw is don't check out a girl's panties and another game where you have to stick your fingers up someone's butt. I'm now on a list somewhere. I'm now on a list
What
somewhere.
what kind of list would that be, Dave?
I don't know. But if there's a list where those two demographics cross, I'm now on that list.
Well, that's quite a list to be on, I think.
It's just
I
creepy.
I mean, it's all in the sake of education. For the sake
Yeah,
of education.
I guess for the sake of education, we taught you about some weird games existence today. So that we did. All these weird video games that we had no other place to put. We just did a little bit of fluff for you today. This was just a relaxing romp down weird video game lane. That's what it was. And on that note, we have to get back to normal, which we will next week. And before I tell you about how we're going to do that, Rob, would you like to add anything to today's episode?
Well, Dave, I do want to take a quick moment to say thank you for sticking around for this one. We know it got a little weird in there, but it was definitely a fun ride, and we appreciate you taking that with us. And we appreciate those of you who have been listening, who just started listening, and those who will continue to start listening. We hope to hear from you, and we appreciate everything. Thank you, thank you, and Dave, I'm forgetting something. Do you know what it is?
No, what is it?
Another
Thank
thank you.
thank you. Well, on that note, I'm gonna take it out of here. Today was kind of a disjointed mess of just looking at the weirdest of the weird that video game as a whole have to offer. But normally on any given week, we tell you a story, a nice little tidy little package coherent story about one of your favorite video games or consoles or technologies or people, or just something, just a great story in itself. And next week we're going to get back to that. So if this is your first episode, join us for another episode. I promise you the rest of them aren't just so scattered messes. But again, this week was a fluff for us. We just wanted to do something different, stick some things that we didn't really know where to put in there, and so here we are. But next week, we're actually going to take a look at God of War, which was originally released for the Sony PlayStation in 2005. And as part of its story, we're going to learn all about its development. We're going to learn about all the games and the movies that the creators were that inspired them to create it. And we're also going to take some time to talk about the mythology that the God of War, the first one, is based on. So stick around and join us next week as we tell you its tale of vengeance on yet another trip down memory card lane. Do the thing.
Doop, doo doom, doop, doodly